This podcast is sponsored by Logos Bible Software. If you've been longing for the tools to take your Bible study deeper, you need to try out Logos. I've been personally using Logos for over a decade now for both my devotional and pastoral study. Right now, Logos has partnered with the Kingdom Dreamers to bring you exclusive savings. Check out at logos.com/Kingdom Dreamer or click the link in the show notes for our exclusive offer.
As I have a dream, and staggered by the winds of police brutality, you have been the veterans of creative suffering.
The ballot or the bullet
is to either ignore them or to deny them without giving details.
And we stand together to win the war.
One small step for man. Yes, we can. Can we all get along?
It's crazy out here. Welcome in to the Wild Wild World Show, the podcast of conscious Christian conversation about the chaos in the cosmos. Yep, that's exactly what we're doing here. This is a Kingdom Dreamer podcast where we fight to reunite righteousness and justice. Kellen, how you doing?
I'm doing good, my brother. When you say things like cosmos, I feel like I got to put my cosmos voice on. Like I don't even know what that would sound like, but it sounds like that needs to be some gravitas, because we're talking about the cosmos, not just our little corner of the world, but the cosmos.
The whole dang universe.
The whole thing, the whole shebang. So I'm doing good, my brother. I'm doing very good.
If you can keep that voice for the rest of the podcast, I'll be very, very impressed.
Oh, we're going to try.
That'd be so amazing. But hey, y'all know what it is. Follow us on Twitter at KingdomXDreams. Follow me at William R. Horn, HORNE. Follow Kellen at oldboy_K_R. That's OLEBOY.
Well, I realize I'm so mature. I haven't made any horny jokes about you in a long time.
That's fair, seeing how that goes back to like middle school, my man.
I know. So you see how mature I am, Will?
It's that cosmos stuff. That gravitas in your voice is bringing maturity out, man.
There you go.
I see it. Hey, but support us also on Patreon. We do have a Patreon page now, patreon.com/Kingdom Dreamers. There you can get the exclusive content. Every week we have an extended conversation. We'll have one of those again today. And you can get a bunch of other benefits. You get merch, you get hats, all those things on the website. So get there, patreon.com. We also got a giveaway this week, giving away a book from Dr. Jipp called Saved by Faith and Hospitality. He's going to be the special interview at the end. So we'll get to that. But into that giveaway, the link will be in the show notes. But man, let's get into it. It's really, really crazy out here.
Man, crazy out here, man.
How crazy is it going?
Man, it's so crazy out here. We got America's favorite fake Mexican restaurant, Chipotle. I hear dropping $25 million. That's like NFL quarterback money. $25 million for a record-setting settlement for getting folks sick. Y'all might remember some of these news stories that's been popping up over the years. It's not just a one-time thing. From like 2015 to 2018, they got over 1,100 people sick with tainted food, and they paying up. So those of y'all that love Chipotle, speaking to some of my family members, just know Chipotle more than any of these other spots. We always joke about White Castle or Taco Bell getting folks sick. Chipotle is literally getting folks sick to the point where they got to pay out millions to cover it. Yeah.
That's wild. So $25 million and 1,100 sick. I'm curious if all that money's going to the people. It can't be, because that'd be like $22,000 a pop, and then I'm going to have to find a way to get sick.
Well,
so I can see this money slide this way. That's fair. There's no way all that goes. But it is pretty wild, though, because I've ate a lot of Chipotle in my life. And it's decent. I'm a fan, I guess, if I got to pick a chain. I don't know. It's never got me sick, but it seems to always be in the news for sickness.
But, that's what Chipotle is, though, man. Like, it's in this weird little niche of food where it's like Americanized, fast foodized, cultural food or whatever, ethnic food, right? So Chipotle is like Americanized Mexican food. Like, it's not real Mexican food. Nobody's confusing it with Mexican food, but Chipotle is Chipotle. Like, the only thing that's kind of in this lane is Qdoba, right? And so, but I have fond memories. Like, I remember back in the day, I don't even remember when Chipotle first came out, but there was a time in my life when I was back home from school in the summer, and one of my homies was working downtown, at a spot I used to kick it at a Bob Marley store, actually. We used to go over there, just kick it, hang out, and there was a Chipotle right next door. That's before, like, at least I knew it was famous. I honestly might have thought it was just a little local thing or whatever. And I go in there and get a burrito a couple times a week. You know what I'm saying? It was a good meal for like $5.50 or whatever it was. And, you know, you max your burrito, you're good to go. But it was never like real Mexican food. It's kind of like Panda Express. That ain't real Chinese food, you know. You ain't confusing it with no real Chinese food, but sometimes you might want you some Panda Express. Just like Olive Garden. Ain't serious Italian food. But sometimes you might just want you some Olive Garden, you know, and it's okay. But Panda Express and Olive Garden, my knowledge, ain't out here putting folks in the hospital.
Yeah, that's fair. But, like, it doesn't seem to slow them down a whole lot. There's still Chipotles on every block, it seems like now. Or at least, like, downtown, like, city places, you know.
There's one right by me. Like, look, my kids was just eating Chipotle the other day. People love Chipotle. Like, it's okay to me. Like, I love real Mexican food to the point where, like, I would rather go get a real burrito or some tacos than a Chipotle bowl or whatever. But it's cool. It's fine. But at this point, look, it's getting everybody sick. I'm not trying to, you know, tell people don't go to Chipotle because I ain't trying to get sued. You know what I'm saying? But I guess be careful. And here's the thing. They promote like they cook their food fresh. So what is it that's so tainted about their stuff? Like we got McDonald's, Taco Bell, White Castle, all these places that are seemingly serving grade D- meat, right? What are they doing? Are they cross-contaminating? Like it ain't like it's that complicated. They got some chicken they cooking up, some steak over here, some carnitas. What is making everybody sick?
Well, if it's actual meat and you just got random teenagers in here cooking it, you're probably not cooking it right. I mean, That's the thing. If it's fake meat, if it's some lower grade meat that's already pre-cooked, this, that, and other, it won't get you sick in that way. It just will kill you in the long run, all the processed crap, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, and because look, somebody worked at Dairy Queen back in the day, and I was working the grill. There's a reality when you got that frozen fake stuff, you just put it in the machine basically, and it goes through the grill and it cooks it, right? But like you said, when you got snotty 15-year-olds out there cooking the food, it might they might not be washing their hands properly. They might not. I don't know, but it says they said tainted food, so I don't know. I'm curious as to what that is. Truthfully. What gets people more sick than meat on a regular basis is fruit and vegetables because we usually eat them raw. So when you cook meat, you usually cook off a lot of the things that can get you sick.
True. Yeah, wasn't it before I had to do something with their lettuce or something?
I seem to recall that, yeah. But like you get the wrong thing and some lettuce and tomatoes, whatever, and it's a wrap. But anyway, so more of the story is eat more White Castle and Taco Bell and eat less Chipotle.
There you go. That's the diet advice straight from Kellen.
Let
me give you something crazier, though. The Kenyan government, our friends over in Kenya, were giving out COVID-19 care packages with a nice little bottle of Henny in there. Call it throat sanitizer, straight from the governor.
Smart people right there. Let's go.
A little throat sanitizer, take care of this disease. That's wild.
Let's go. Let's go. That's my people back in the motherland. I appreciate y'all for keeping it real. It might be ridiculous, but that's okay. Because look, we all stuck in the house. Ain't nothing wrong with having a little bit of Henny. You know what I mean? Whether or not, because my man got up there and said, like, look, the studies we've seen that alcohol is helping fight the disease, and then other people, like some U.S. organizations, was like, yeah, no, that's not true, fam. But he was like, look, whatever, it's fighting disease. Look, all I know is this: whether you got COVID-19 or not, when you sit up in the crib, some little Henny might be beneficial to you. Now, I know people live their lives different ways. I ain't telling you, to be out here drunk and all the time, whatever. But like a little Henny might make you feel a little bit better, whether it's because the alcohol is killing the disease or it's just killing your bad vibes. Whatever, a little Henny. So they doing their thing. I appreciate them, and I especially appreciate Will, my man, getting out here to drop this knowledge, looking like an extra in Cool Runnings. With like a fire retardant face mask and some stunner shades on. If you have it, go ahead and you Google the image of the Nairobi governor, Mike Sonko, out here looking like he looking like a new age rapper or something. I don't know what's going on right now with the fit he has in this press conference. Oh boy,
he's like some type of It's wild. It's really wild. Because, yeah, there's the World Health Organization said no, alcohol doesn't, and he's out here sending Hennessy bottles. So the question is, why did Trump not send that with the stimulus check?
Trump don't want us to feel good. He ain't about them good vibes. Trump about that negativity. And if Trump did it, he said some Jim Beam, because he trying to, reach a certain customer, maybe some moonshine or something like that. He wouldn't have sent the Henny. That's a purely African thing right there. You know who do look like, now that I think about it? If you remember the Chappelle show when they had Black Bush, and Mos Def was the black head of CIA, he looked like the black head of CIA's right-hand man. That's what he looked like. Like he in a Black Bush sketch. So my man is out here wilding out, sending folks Henny. We about the good vibes in Africa. Look, I say we. I'm not in Africa. I've been to Africa. I appreciate it. You know what I'm saying? And those are my people. But we about them good vibes out here in a tough times such as these. So I appreciate you, Kenya. Keep doing your thing.
See, so he's living up to it. He's living up to whatever role he's trying to play. So it's pretty hilarious. So I immediately text my guy from Kenya to confirm that was actually what he's doing. And he said, yeah, that's actually all these, like, it comes with like 5 mini bottles of Henny. So,
hey, look, I ain't mad. The kind you get in the gas station. You just want to bless a drink real quick. Them little joints. Okay. Well, I ain't mad at it.
Hey, so something else crazy going on. Not crazy, but it's really, really popping right now. People blocked off their Sunday nights for the next 5 weeks so that they can watch this documentary, The Last Dance, on the Bulls and Michael Jordan. Mm-hmm. I know you got thoughts, Kellen. I know you got thoughts. We got a lot of places we could go with this. You love Michael Jordan, I know.
Hey, MJ the Great.
MJ the Great. But it is there's a lot going on in this documentary. It's actually super interesting. They only show the first 2 episodes, and they'll show 2 more this coming Sunday. But here's one thing. One of the big things in the first 2 episodes, right? They're talking about all the paychecks everybody's making in the 97, 98 season. So Jordan was making $33 million, right? And then his number 2 man, Scotty, was making $2.5 million a year, right? Because he signed a long 7-year deal in 91. So what he said on there, right? Scotty said that he signed that because he wanted to protect his family. He signed 7-year, $18 million in 91 because he wanted longevity, could be injured, even though if he didn't do that, he could have been making a lot more money. So here's a question, Kellen. What would you do? Would you take the security of 7 years, or would you gamble your basketball career, potential injuries, all that, to get more? What would you do?
Well, see, look. Here's the thing. Like, there's a million jokes that can be got off about this, right? Like, first off, MJ being the killer that he is, fully okay with making $31 million more than his right-hand man. You know what I mean? One who he said he couldn't, he said, don't say Michael Jordan's name without saying Scottie Pippen's name. He said he could have done it without Scottie, giving Scottie all the praise in the world. At the same time, when he knew Scottie was mad about his contract, for those that didn't watch it, if you ain't a sports fan, we're going to keep talking about this, though, because you don't have to be a sports fan to appreciate this. But Scottie Pippen in the last year, his deal being one of the not lowest paid players in the league. Put it this way, Scottie was like the 125th most highly paid player in the league. It might have very well been one of the 2 or 3 best players in the league, right? Possibly. And he wasn't getting paid anything, and this was for years. And so he was like, look, I hurt my foot. I ain't about to give up my summer. I'm gonna get this surgery done during the year. Y'all ain't paying me nothing, so I ain't about to play this whole year. And Mike came out there and said, yo, Scottie's selfish. Like, yo, Mike, you making $30 million more than this man. Like, now you might, obviously, you worthy of getting whatever your money, but you gonna call the man selfish, he ain't getting no back, right? Not only that, at this time, Mike is the most popular player in the world, popular athlete, person, whatever in the world. I'm like, hey, man, I ain't trying to check another man's wallet, but, maybe hook Scottie up with a shoe deal. Like, I remember the Pippins. Do you remember the Pippins?
Yeah.
Like, how much was he making for that? I wanted to look it up. I don't even know. But, like, that's one of them times where, Mike go over to Nike, like, yo, my man is getting underpaid right now. I need him happy so that I can keep winning these ships so that y'all can keep, selling these shoes. I need y'all to give this man like a $30 million shoe deal right quick, so that we can keep him happy and satisfied. You know what I'm saying? Like, we know that kind of happens now a little bit. Like, LeBron was putting pressure on Cleveland to get Tristan Thompson all sorts of ridiculous amount of money. So I wasn't mad at Scotty. So I say all that to say, Will, to answer your question, I'm not mad at Scotty for doing what he did. It might not have been the smartest business decision. But if you watch the documentary, Scottie Pippen went to college as like a 6'1" dude. Wasn't even on the basketball team. He went to an NAIA school. If you don't know what that is, that's not Division I, Division II, or Division III. That's basically like we just got sports for the fun of it. You know what I'm saying? Tickets probably cost $1.50, whatever. Like it's nothing. Nobody from NAIA is thinking about going to the NBA. That's not what that is, right?
He was equipment manager there.
Right. He was an equipment man. He wasn't even on the team. That's what he was when he went to school. Now, he wanted to play, so he worked on his game. They hit a huge growth spurt, hit 6'7". Next thing you know, he's the top 5 pick in the draft. So you got a dude that is just in school trying to make it. Not NBA probably ain't nowhere on his radar, although apparently he told people he was going to play in the league or whatever. But he wasn't on the team. And now a couple of years later, he's in the NBA, and he had in front of him, they say, look, you can sign this contract for, at the time, it was decent money, and it's like $20 million, $18 million, and your family essentially will be set for life. I know we get tainted with like these numbers now with all these athletes, how much money they make. $18 million will set your family for life. And well, you saw where Scotty came from, right?
Yep.
Basically poverty. There was like a 12-person family. His dad and his younger brother, one of his brothers, were in a wheelchair. He's like, yo, I got to take care of my family. This thing kind of came out of nowhere, this whole basketball NBA thing. And he signed it while he was still on his rookie deal. He wasn't no superstar at the time. So he's like, yo, I don't know how long this is going to last. So you tell me I can sign a 7-year deal and guarantee $20 million, or I can kind of risk it and sign a couple-year deal, and who knows what's going to happen. Because remember, at the time, that was decent money. So he signed 7 years, 18. Well, he could have signed for 3 years, $7-8 million. So he was like, look, I'm going to take the security so I can take care of my family, right? Mm-hmm. I understand it. So I'm not going to tell him I'm not going to say that was an incorrect decision or that was wrong or whatever, because I understand, you got the bird in the hand or the beer in the hand versus 2 in the fridge. Looking back at it, it's like one of the greatest players ever. He could have made a lot more money. But I get it. You try to take care of people.
No, yeah, I think in his situation, it's a smart move. So you can't blame Scotty for making a bad business deal. Plus, nobody could have predicted, or at least he couldn't have predicted all the TV deals that were going to happen shortly that increased the revenue, that increased the amount that the players could make.
Right. And he signed that extension in 91.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was before or after they won the title. I think it was before they won the title, because they won the title in 91, 92, 93. Then 96, 7, 8. Yeah. So I think that was before they won the title when he signed that extension. So this is before the Bulls became the Bulls, before Scottie Pippen became Scottie Pippen. So
and before the NBA became the NBA in terms of his TV revenue. So he's making a smart deal. What I think is grimy about it, though, which is what they're focusing on, it seems like in this documentary, is how the organization want to restructure a deal. That's wild.
Yeah, but at the same time, that would be very benevolent of them.
Yeah, but you could at least restructure. Like in those last couple of years, right? You could have restructured something. I'm not saying you pay him $33 million like Michael maybe, but some respect when you're a top 5 player in the league at the time, right? Mm-hmm. And you're making the 122nd in terms of pay, you got to at least meet halfway there. You know what I'm saying?
But look what happened. They didn't, and they still won 6 titles. You know what I mean? And part of let's be honest. Is it possible that part of the reason they won 6 titles is because Scottie Pippen was so underpaid and they could afford to pay other guys?
That's true.
That's true. Who knows? And so from an organizational standpoint, those guys came out kind of looking like bad guys, but they won 6 titles. They had 2 3-peats. And the reality is, once Scottie moved on, he was still a good player for some years, but they got the best of his years and they had to pay him. And that's what the NFL does. NFL's like, yo, we will take all your best years, and as soon as you get good enough to outplay your rookie contract or outplay this bargain deal, now we're good. Go find some money somewhere else. So look, but I agree. And that's, a point we'll talk about later is kind of about how people do business. But I agree with you. It would have been a good thing to do. But these folks ain't in the business of being kind and giving money away when they don't have to. They like, hey, look, we told you not to sign it, Scotty. You chose to sign it. Now you mad about it. We told you not to. That's what you wanted to do, and so now you got to live with that life or live those the consequences of those decisions. So,
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So, well, let's move to a new segment within this same topic. I don't know what we're calling this yet. We're calling this Kellen Reeves rants. I'm trying to figure out how to move the R's together. Yeah, but here's this drop. We'll figure something.
The time has come for America to hear the truth.
We'll figure something out. But I need to hear your thoughts. You went and popped off on Facebook for anybody who friends with you on Facebook. And stirred the pot of Chicago and said, MJ is overrated.
So look. Here's the deal. This ain't first take or nothing like that. I ain't never saying nothing just to say it. However, sometimes I like exploring some of these things because we take certain things for granted and don't actually think about some things intellectually, right? So people got their panties in a bunch of that or whatever. But here's the reality. Michael Jordan is overrated. Now, hear the word I'm saying, Will. I'm saying Michael Jordan is overrated. I'm not saying he's bad. I'm not saying he's not great. I'm not saying he's not the best. I'm literally saying he is overrated. What does overrated mean? Overrated mean something that is not as good as people make it out to be, right? Sometimes that's because of emotion, perception, whatever it is, right? Now let's look at who Michael Jordan is culturally. Like, I was born in 84. So I was born, I grew up in the Michael Jordan era. I had bull sheets. I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I remember I had bull sheets and blankets, right? I was never really a Bulls fan, but it was just Jordan, and I had a Michael Jordan poster. I grew up watching him win those titles. I mean, some of them I was a little young to remember, but I grew up watching Jordan win the title. So I grew up in that Jordan age, Space Jam, Want to Be Like Mike, all of that stuff, right? And so, yeah, Jordan was always that guy. He was always the GOAT. That's what it was. That's how we grew up. So I'm not anti-Jordan in any way. However, as I grew up, got older, started watching ball and all of this stuff, I started seeing the way people talk about Jordan as if he was this infallible basketball god who never lost and all of that. And heightened by now with the internet era and Twitter and all of this stuff and how people argue about basketball and sports and just everything. But how the critiques that other players get now are completely ignored from Michael Jordan. Right? And so as I'm looking at this, I'm like, you guys have overrated Jordan because now he's turned into a myth, right? Not only because of his basketball greatness, but because of the Jordan brand. And that's a large part of it. Michael Jordan became a marketing empire, not because Michael Jordan is a marketing genius, but because people at Nike are marketing geniuses, and they stamped his face all over. Now, he was a good pitch man for a variety of reasons, but the Jordan shoes are absolutely iconic. The Jordan brand in general is iconic. His commercials are iconic. Space Jam is essentially iconic, even though it's not even a good movie, right? So all the stuff around Jordan has been deified to the point where, like, he's not even he's not a basketball player anymore. Jordan is an overall brand, and it's beneficial to us as people to like just say, "Oh yeah, Jordan was perfect." We look back on it, like it's like sometimes people look back on high school and. Well, some people look on high school like it is the worst thing ever, but some people look and say, "Oh, that was the best time," and da-da-da, or college, whatever the time it was in their life when things were going good, you tend to exaggerate it, right? And so people have exaggerated who and what Michael Jordan was because everything is getting mixed together in this big Jordan gumbo with, with the brand and the shoes that are still popular now to then having 20 years of basketball players and athletes talk about how great Jordan was and how everybody loved him so much. He's turned into this basketball guy. And it wasn't true, right? Jordan lost games. The Pistons kicked Michael's butt for years until Scottie Pippen became the Scottie Pippen we know, right? Yeah. Jordan won 3 ships in a row, and then he was like, this is too much, and he had stuff going on. He walked away from the sport, came back, suited up and played that year, played in 95, and lost to Shaq and Penny. And I literally just heard somebody today, respected basketball person, say, "Oh, well, that doesn't really count." Why does that not count? Jordan is the same person that we give credit for being a maniacal competitor, and all he cared about was winning, and it was just winning. And so this is people always try to turn this into a Jordan versus LeBron thing, but this is not to me, it's not Jordan versus LeBron, but I find it interesting because the arguments people use against LeBron, they don't also use against Jordan, right? So LeBron gets knocked for losing in the finals, right? It doesn't matter if he dragged a terrible team to the finals and lost in the finals. They just say, well, you lost in the finals, so you failed that year, right? Jordan joined the team that got to the conference semis the year before without him, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then lost again in the conference semis the next year, but it doesn't count because he wasn't playing the whole year. Like, it wasn't his choice not to play that whole year, right? He chose not to play. Then he chose to came back and he lost, and they're like, well, that don't matter, right? So people take – anytime Jordan lost, like that time against Orlando, the time when he got so much pressure that he took a break off from basketball for a year, the years before that where he wasn't getting to the championship because he didn't beat the Pistons, they're like, that doesn't matter. Those losses don't matter. The only thing that matters is that he didn't lose in the finals. Will, does that make any sense at all?
So
it don't make no sense. Hold on, I'm gonna let you finish. It makes no sense. It makes no sense to say, well, Jordan was 6-0 in the finals, right? Great, he was 6-0 in the finals. What about all those other times he lost in the playoffs? That's like you're saying, well, the only time it matters is when you get to the finals. It doesn't matter if you lose before the finals. Which is saying, I'm going to punish you for losing later than I am for losing earlier. I'm going to punish you for having a better year. So, like, look at LeBron, be like, he's 3-6 in the finals. He lost 6 times in the finals. How many times did Jordan lose before he got to the finals? That's stupid. It is absolutely stupid logic to say, I'm going to it's a negative on your record to lose later on. That means, according to that logic, it would be better for LeBron or anybody else to lose in the first round than it would be to win 3 freaking series and get to the finals. It's stupid. It's sort of way that we deify and mythologize Jordan means he's overrated. He's not. He's still the greatest. He's still the best. He's still awesome, but he's not quite what people want to make him to be. Boom, there you go.
So you're saying LeBron is the GOAT. That's what I heard. I had to, man.
I'm going to sleep, Will.
It's for Cleveland, man, for Cleveland. No, I think you're right, though. I think it is interesting how the brand, I think in particular, has brought into new level. Because even so, we're the same generation, but I was born later, so I'm young when these championships happen. I'm born in 91. So it's not like exactly. It's not like I'm watching these championships when I'm under 6, you know what I'm saying? But Jordan still is like the icon to live up to with basketball. It doesn't matter if you watch it or not, right? So it lives beyond that. And what's interesting, though, is you think about even when he made the playoffs, the records the Bulls had when they made those playoffs so many years were like 30 wins, like 38 wins,
years, yeah.
30 wins, right?
Early on.
But the same arguments against LeBron, right, is like, oh, he's in the weak East, but he missed the playoffs when he'd have 44 wins, you know.
Right.
Or, you know, so I don't know. It is interesting. It is interesting to see the deification of Michael Jordan.
Yeah, and that's all it is people have made him to be something he's not because of, their reasons. Especially, I'm out here in the Chicago area, and, you can't say nothing about – there's people out here trying to convince me that, Derrick Rose was clearly the best player in the league, So, I know people start loving their stars and their athletes. But, hey, my thing is just, like you said, Jordan is great, but he's a great human being. Like, he was in terms of basketball. He's not a basketball guy. Jordan had one of the all-time great coaches ever. He had one of the all-time perfect fits for a number 2 player in Scottie Pippen. And those Bulls teams were actually good and talented teams, though they – look, here's the other thing maybe we can talk about another time. In the mid-'90s, that era they were dominating, quiet as it's kept, the other teams weren't that great. The other teams – people want to talk about how great all these other teams were. And here's my question. If they were so great, where were they? The teams in the West. The only team Jordan played twice in the finals was Utah, right? So if all these other teams were so great and Jordan just kept them from winning titles, why is it Phoenix only made it to the finals once in those 8, 9, 10 years? Why is it the Lakers only made it once early in the run? Why is it Portland only made it once? If those teams are so great, right? And they're these championship teams, why weren't they there all the time? The Knicks, if they were so great, how come the Knicks couldn't consistently beat the Pacers, or the Pacers couldn't consistently beat the Knicks? How come with the 2 years Jordan didn't win the title, those two excellent, great all-time teams supposedly didn't win the title? Houston popped up, won 2 ships, and we ain't see them again. Did they ever play Jordan when he came back the second time? Nah. Like, we love those guys because we grew up in that era. We got the NBA or NBC theme coming up. Reggie Miller, I love Reggie Miller, but was he really that great of a player? Like, in terms, I mean, he's a Hall of Famer, but was he so great that, like, the fact that Jordan beat him means he's the GOAT? I don't know. Was Patrick Ewing the top 3 center of his time? Was he better than Robinson or Olajuwon? I don't know. You know, those Knicks teams, who was the second best player on the Knicks teams? John Starks? Larry Johnson? We make these teams to be great, awesome. Like, everybody says Jordan kept everybody in his era from winning the ship. Did he? I mean, clearly he was winning them, so on some level, yeah. But, I mean, Ewing had 2 years to win without him. He ain't do it. You know what I'm saying? I didn't see Clyde Drexler in the finals again. I used to love to see it, the Seahawks, the Sonics. Like, that was my favorite team. Gary Payton and Sean Kemp only made it to the finals once. Right. So if these teams were so great, why were we not seeing like a Lakers Celtics type thing where he was beating up on the other great team of his era? Because there was no other great team of his era, Will. The reality is that they weren't there. There was no other great team in that era that he was playing. There was no Warriors. You know what I'm saying? Heck, there was no Heat. You know, like there wasn't a Lakers or a Celtics or whatever that was out there competing against him. So Jordan was dominant. He was doing his thing, but we lie about what it was he was actually doing because it makes us feel, better about it. He's great enough on his own that we don't need to mythologize how great Reggie Miller was, or act like, Jeff Hornacek was a lockdown defender. You know what I'm saying? When he was a primary defender for the finals. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't need to act like that. Let's just be real about it. So that's my thing, bro. I just want people to be real about it. That's it. And I know they won't, but I'm out here having these thought exercises because I find it interesting.
So again, what I hear you saying is LeBron is the GOAT, right?
Oscar Robertson.
I was trying to pull that out your mouth, see if I can get more people fighting you and stuff like that.
I mean, look, I'm not just gonna say something just to say it. I don't think LeBron the GOAT, but yeah. I think Jordan is the greatest, but it is something that can be debated and discussed, and it's not an objective opinion. That's subjective, right? We can all differ on that. So if you think LeBron is the GOAT, I think there's arguments to be made for that.
Yeah, so we've determined it here on the Wild Wild World that LeBron is the GOAT. All right.
Yeah. But, Will, so look, I know we're talking about The Last Dance, right? There's a couple of things that I do want to throw out to you about that, though, right? And again, this is having to do with sports and all of that, but I think there's elements here about Jordan and this whole story that I think are relevant to all levels or all types of life or all areas of life. I can't talk right now. And one of the main selling points that people have about Jordan in this documentary, and one of the main things that we all kind of know about Jordan, is he had this crazy maniacal drive and competitiveness to win at all costs, win at everything, all the time. He had to win. That's all he cared about, right? And people have debated whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, and they've asked about, is that a positive trait and other ways to do it. So I want to ask you, Will, let me throw that out to you. Like, what do you think about this whole idea of Jordan's crazy, kind of almost sociopathic drive? And is that good, bad, and different? What do you think?
I guess it depends what you're looking at, right? If you're looking at a team purely trying to get championships, I guess that's a good thing. If you look at a person in real life, clearly it can't be that good, right? Like, it's to win at all costs is it's in nature, it's selfish, right? Mm-hmm. You can want to compete and win, but to be like crazy at that is selfish. And I think, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm tripping about this, but I think when we look at the life of him outside of basketball, right? Maybe that fed into those other parts too, because he's seen as a selfish dude just in the ways that he's done business, or at least that's the narrative. I don't know, necessarily if that's true or anything like that. But I don't know. I don't know if I'd see it as good. I guess it depends on where the limits of drawing it is, because I don't think he drew those limits on the court, like as just on the court.
Yeah, no, I think that's real, and there's an element. It's tough because, like I said, when it just comes to the winning part, just like, hey, we're playing basketball or whatever sport, yeah, winning at all costs and doing whatever and all that stuff in a vacuum. So yeah, that's great because you're willing to push it further than anybody else and is getting these results. But it doesn't seem like it's something that can be turned on and off. That seems like a personality trait that I don't know if you can just have that on the court or, in whatever field that you're in, right? And so if that's how you're built and that's how you're made and that's how you are in all areas of life, yeah, it would seem like, and like you said, we've seen it with Jordan. Yeah, he kind of pushes it to the limit in other areas too. And it would kind of drive you crazy. If you know people that are really, really competitive, like I like to think I'm competitive in areas or whatever, but people that are super competitive, it's almost like, man, what is wrong with you? You know what I'm saying? Like, we're just over here playing Madden and you are freaking out. Like, you about to fight me because you're taking this L in Madden. Like, I don't want to be around you, And so it only works when you are the best. Like, you can't be that guy and be the 11th man. Like I used to make a joke. They say if Kobe Bryant was 5'8", he'd be a serial killer because it's just like he's a sociopath, right? And I know that it's just a joke, so the through lines might not make sense or whatever. So don't think too much about it. But just the point was, if you're built like that type of individual, and you don't have the physical talent or ability to make it happen, like it has to manifest itself in other crazy ways, right? And so that's kind of my second question, which is, because I'm thinking it can manifest itself sometimes to being ultra competitive in business and things of that nature. And something I wonder about often is, can a just good, moral, kind-hearted person reach the pinnacle of success in sports and business? And I do say the pinnacle, right? Because there are plenty of nice guys that played in the NBA or whatever, like David Robinson is a nice guy. He won championships or whatever. But to be the absolute best, like to be Jordan level or even like where LeBron, like where you just are dominating your competition. Can you do that? And same thing with business, like Mark Zuckerberg and all that. Can you do that and reach that absolute pinnacle and also be just a good, kind-hearted person that does things, I guess, morally well?
See, that's tough. I think off the initial, I'd say no. You'd have to convince me otherwise, because just the nature of anything that we have in this world, business, sports, all those things, right, is about power in whatever realm that is, right? Mm-hmm. And to grasp after power, to try and get that at all costs, automatically, again, makes you have to be self-oriented and borderline obsessed to get to those levels, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that's just how it is. And anybody who's truly self-oriented and training themselves to continue to be more self-oriented and getting better, this, that, and other, can't actually be others-centered, which would be the core of, actually loving people or having some good moral. And I'm not saying you can't do good stuff, right? Because, I don't know, all those guys at the top, Kobe and Jordan, if we're just talking sports, right? I'm sure they did good stuff. They gave their money to people. They did good things, right? Mm-hmm. But, that type of drive, I feel like it's got to take you somewhere else. Like, how many CEOs we know that are really, like, I don't know, out here giving and stuff like that?
Like, I'm just all about y'all. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think about it too. Like, even as you say, like self-focused versus other-centered. I mean, because it's easiest if we stay with sports. I mean, if you're gonna be the best and the greatest, and your team is gonna win and all that, like, there's an element that we always hear about of pressure that you put on the people around you to, to push themselves to succeed at the highest level. And I'm sure there's an element where you could do that, just by. You could push people with their love for you, I guess. Like, they don't want to disappoint you because they care about you so much, and I guess somehow that can push them to to their limits. But the much more common element of that is fear. Like my teammate here, Jordan or whoever, I'm going to push myself to my breaking point, because if I don't, this person here is going to be breathing down my throat, or he's going to get me out of here. He's going to punch me in the face, or you know what I'm saying, or whatever it is. So you're driven by fear. Maybe you might even appreciate that at some point, because I reached the height I never thought I could reach. But there's still an element of, for the person that's doing the pushing, you're not being kind, you know what I'm saying, necessarily, or you're not being caring towards the other person, because there's always a possibility that they'll break. Like we always hear about Jordan breaking, like Kwame Brown and some of his other teammates that couldn't take that pressure. And he's like, good, I don't care, because if they can't take it, I want it out of here. Right. Yeah. So you're breaking a whole lot of eggs. You're cracking a whole lot of eggs to make an omelet. You know what I mean? And same thing with businesses. I mean, I'm not a businessman in the sense that I don't know all the ins and outs of high level corporate like acquisitions and things of that nature, right? But there's elements of business practices and things of that nature where you are inherently taking advantage of people, right? Yeah, you're paying your janitors $9 an hour, for very important jobs. You are structured, because we're in a capitalist society, and then I don't want to get down to the world of how moral or not capitalism is. In order to make money, you are selling products for more than what they're worth, or services for more than what you provided them for, and you're paying people a low enough number where you can profit and make money. You know what I mean? And so and you're probably buying other businesses from people. Like there's just a lot of stuff that goes into that. Well, I don't know. Like, if you can look back, if those folks can look back and say, yes, I tried to always operate morally and, in good faith and putting others before myself to do that. And, again, this is just kind of a thought exercise, a question, so I'm not even trying to cast judgment on folks or anything like that. Yeah. But it's just something I always find funny. Like, could you be Michael Jordan if you were really being a nice person? You know what I mean? Like,
That's tough. It's a tough question, man. Well, because I think even on the business side, right, or just the way it's all built, ultra capitalistic society, right? It's cutthroat, right? To get its profits over people, to get to the top, you have to sacrifice those in front of you, essentially, right? And the more money and power and things that we accumulate, the more we're enslaved to those things, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, can you be generous if you have a lot of money? Sure. Like, is it possible to be a good person and have power, influence, and money? Sure. But I don't know if that's the case, if that's what you're chasing after. Because some people just run into money and influence through all sorts of random ways, right?
Well, you could even say like a Bill Gates who invented something, or people that have, just kind of on the like even Zuckerberg. I know I use his name, but he created something, and now he got other things along with his story that
changed his narrative, right?
Yeah, but when you're a creator, I suppose that's a different thing.
So there's ways to get maybe to the top, but it seems like that's by maybe not happenstance, but something else other than my goal is to get to the top of whatever this is, right? Yeah. I feel like to be that type of oriented person will at least make it very hard to be somebody other than a selfish person.
It's like politics. Like I remember going back years back when Obama was first coming onto the scene, and people were, making all these claims about him, about how great of a guy he was, and all those sorts of things. And my thought at the time was, I don't know, is he? Because the whole nature of politics is, politics is political, but to get ahead in politics, you are compromising, you're making deals, you're doing those sorts of things, right? You have to make yourself a viable candidate to all sorts of different people with all sorts of different goals. And so my question was, at the time, I was younger, I was thinking about this, is can somebody, that gets into politics, can you get to the level of president or near that level truly sticking to whatever your actual beliefs are? Like if you throw a list of 100 topic issues out there and it's like, this is what I feel about all 100 of these things. Yeah. Can you get to the level of being president without having to compromise or bend your thoughts or morals or ignore your views on certain things on a high number of them? And I don't know, because there's so many different people that you have to appease to get up to that point. There's businesses, corporations giving you, money to represent them on some level. And so my thought has always been, well, once you get up to the level of president, you're no longer, it's not a person that is sticking to their ideological guns. Maybe they got a couple big ideas that they're sticking to, but for the most part, I don't see how it would be possible to say I'm not going to compromise. I'm going to stick to what I believe and get the support that you need. And so, whether it's Obama or anybody else, that's something I stewed on a bit at that time. So it's kind of the same thing here.
Yeah, no, it goes in some different direction. I think particularly in our partisan politics, which we'll talk about more later on our Patreon exclusive extended conversation. But
hey, nice plug.
Yeah, you see what I did there? But our system that's built off of two parties and lobbying and stuff like that, I think that makes it even more impossible. On top of the fact that, again, you're in the mindset to get to the top of something that makes it hard to be, other-centered at all if you're trying to make it to the top. So,
something to think about, Again, we got thoughts, hit us up. Let us know what you think. Hit us in the DMs, Facebook.
However you want to do
it. However you want to.
Yeah, send letters. Write letters.
Yes. Well, before we move on to some other things we have for you guys and later on our Patreon exclusive, they just want to remind you, I know for the last couple of weeks we've been letting you guys know, we want to remind you again about Stitcher Premium. Go ahead, download Stitcher, go to Stitcher on your computer, whatever, and use the promo code Wild World, and you get Stitcher Premium free for 30 days. Again, that promo code is Wild World, not Wild World, just one wild, free for 30 days. All right, so if you're like, what is Stitcher? You're not familiar with it. It's a premium subscription service. And Stitcher Premium in particular, it includes bonus episodes and exclusive shows from hit podcast hosts, gives you early access to popular podcasts as well as ad-free shows. So if you're into comedy, there's shows like Comedy Bang Bang and WTF with Mark Maron, and one of my favorites, How Did This Get Made? If you like true crime, there's Criminology, or My Favorite Murder, or even Marvel's Wolverine. So if you like comic books too. If you like pop culture, there's also Getting Curious with Jonathan Van Ness or LeVar Burton Reads. LeVar Burton, who was a big part of my childhood as well as possibly yours, with Reading Rainbow. He has an excellent podcast too. So after your free trial, Stitcher Premium is $4.99 a month or $34.99 a year. And again, use that promo code Wild World and you get that 30 days free. So go ahead and check that out. We'd appreciate it very, very much here.
Yep, Stitcher Premium, good stuff. And with that, we're going to move on to a special interview portion with Dr. Joshua Jipp. He's a professor at Trinity Evangelical in New Testament. And we talk about in this interview things from the church and politics to hospitality, things during COVID-19, how Jesus is king even in COVID-19. So some interesting things. And then after this interview, Kel and I are going to come back, chop it up in our extended conversation you can get on Patreon. Again, patreon.com/Kingdom Dreamers. Any tier, you get this exclusive content. But we're going to come back, chop it up about the American church and partisan politics in America and just kind of the different divides between how churches approach politics, the dangers, and what we need to be doing. So meet us back for Patreon. Enjoy this interview. See you. So I want to welcome Dr. Joshua Jipp to the Wild Wild World podcast, which is part of the Kingdom Dreamer movements. So Dr. Jipp is a professor of New Testament at Trinity Evangelical Divinity School, author of a handful of fire books, a family man, and a true Midwesterner, as I understand it. Honored to have been a former student of his and to continue to work or learn from your work in particular. So tell the people, who is Josh Jipp?
Who is Josh Jipp? Yes.
Yeah, that's loaded.
Wow, that's not the first question I was expecting. I am, as you said, I'm a family man. Married to my wonderful wife Amber, who we met at Trinity Evangelical Divinity School. We were both doing MDivs, and she's been in college ministry for 15 years. We've got 3 kids: Josiah, 8, Lucas 7, Sapna, who we just adopted from India. She is 5, and I teach New Testament. I love God's Word. I, of course, fundamentally a son of God, beloved child, called into fellowship with his son, trying to love him and to obey him, albeit imperfectly, in the world in which we live. So yeah, those are a few things about me. I'm a baseball lover. I see that Colorado Rockies
Yeah, I grew up as a kid
now
in Colorado, so I was in Ohio as a teenager. Colorado as a kid.
I'm gonna put on my Twins hat for the rest of this interview too. So
my
I hope we get
co-host
baseball.
will appreciate that because he's from Minneapolis, so he's a Minnesota guy, so he'll appreciate the Twins gear.
Yeah, very cool.
The Rockies never do anything, so it just it's a humble position. I guess
it's been 1991 since the Twins have won a World Series. I was a 10-year-old back then, so I'm biding my time too.
Yeah, that's fair. Such as baseball, we miss sports in our time of quarantine. But I guess as a family man, so I'm a new father, man. Just had a kid in January. So you got any tips for a father?
I would say enjoy it, and there's going to be a lot of hard work that you're going to be putting in, obviously the mundane, the day-to-day. I've been reading books on happiness, written some by Christians but a lot by non-Christians, and it's interesting. So many people say one of the hardest things that they do is the early years of parenthood. But then also on these surveys, almost everybody will say one of the most satisfying things they ever did in life was, raise their children. Yeah. So there are going to be some hard times, some mundane times, but I would say enjoy it. There's a lot of joy to come in my experience from children. Have fun with them, and enjoy the opportunity you have to be a culture shaper for the child in your life. You have a chance to, I don't want to say make them into your mirror image, but you really have a chance, right, to pass on the values that you believe in. Teach them scripture, teach them, read good books to them, have fun with them, show them that you're on their level. Like there's a lot of joy, I think, that can be had. So
culture making for children. Yeah, I never thought about it that way. That's a powerful way to think about it.
Yeah, you have a chance to shape them and mold them, in really, really, really powerful ways. God's gifted you and your wife with that, and they'll never have anybody like the two of you that are pouring into them. So not to put too much pressure on you. But.
Not as helpful though. I mean, I'm super early into it. He's only 10 weeks old, so it's like.
Yeah.
I have no idea what's coming.
You're not doing the culture making yet. You're making sure.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure he's still kicking it and doing the basic things.
That's important.
But it's been good. So I do want to shift then. So you've released a ton of books, which have been super helpful. I guess not a ton, but a good amount that have been super helpful. So you released the Christ is King, right? Which is Pauline Christology in 2015, right?
Yep.
And then Saved by Faith and Hospitality, 2017, and then the Reading Acts kind of handbook from Cascade in 2018. All those have been super helpful in my ministry. And actually, when this airs, I'm going to be doing a giveaway with the Kingdom Dreamers to give away a copy of your Saved by Faith and Hospitality book, because that's been such a powerful book in my ministry
and life.
Very cool. I'll be excited for that. But you have a new book coming out, right? In the near future. Yep. Can you tell us anything about that at all?
Yeah, for sure. It's called The Messianic Theology of the New Testament. In some ways, it's a surprise to me because I've never been the biggest fan of New Testament theology, in part because sometimes it will try to make, it will impose sort of a false unity on the New Testament, or that will leave a lot of the interesting things out, and I don't want to do that. So I'm in this book not trying to say that let me say what I am trying to say. I am trying to say that a foundational thread for the New Testament texts are the earliest Christian confessions that Jesus is the Messiah and Jesus is Lord. And that these early Christian confessions are not just confessions, but they are generative theologically for the different books of the New Testament. And they are also generative theologically for us as we're thinking about how we move to do dogmatic and systematic theology. So it's not arguing that this is the only theme. It's not that Jesus is the Messiah, that Jesus is Lord, Jesus is King. but it is arguing that it is the central thread, and it can be supplemented with others. But yeah, so I'm basically working through the first section are the compositions of the New Testament, showing how messianism is worked through Matthew, Mark, Luke, Paul, Hebrews, Revelation, the New Testament texts. And then the second section goes through dogmatic categories, scripture, Christology, soteriology, sanctification, politics, and so forth, to show how Jesus as the Messiah is generative for theological thinking as well. So anyway, that book be out with Erdman's sometime at the end of the year. I think November. So
okay, so that's pretty soon then. I was thinking it was 2021 or something. So I gotta get my pre-order in then.
Yeah, get it in. Yeah.
Okay.
I appreciate having those 3 or 4 fans, of which you are one, Will. Who?
Hey man, I gotta make sure I get them. I got that Acts handbook right away. I had that thing pre-ordered to come to my door,
thanks,
and it has been helpful. So it actually has been.
Thank you.
Helpful. I don't just throw my money at you because I know you.
Totally. I mean, I want to we have the pressure of at times, our audience, do we write for the Academy and sort of, get some of the professional accolades and keep those people as our, conversation partners. Maybe I portrayed that a little too cynically because I don't feel totally cynical towards it. Yeah. But then there's also a sense of I want to write books that are helpful for people, that are good, that help people with their lives, and even if it's just
I feel like all your books, at least those 3 have been really balanced in terms of academics, in that I can apply it on the ground pastorally as well.
Cool. Yeah, thanks.
So you're striking that balance. So I'm excited for this next book. So the other thing I saw, and I just saw that there was a YouTube video released on it, but I didn't get to watch it. But I saw a tweet about you speaking to a group at Trinity about, I think, Mosaic, about Christ is King even during COVID-19. And I was a little jealous that I didn't get an invite to that Zoom meeting. And I'm going to blame that on Daniel Hardman for that.
It's not my fault.
Exactly. I'm gonna call him up and blame him for that. But I figured I'd try to pry some of that content out of you here. Yeah. Could you just give us maybe the cliff notes of what it looks like for Christ to be King in this season of COVID-19?
Yeah, sure. No problem. My topic I was originally assigned before all the COVID-19 stuff happened was, the series is on kingdom and politics. And I thought I would give a talk that I gave a year and a half ago that would talk a little bit more about how do we relate to the governing authorities? How do we handle the fact that we are citizens of Christ's kingdom, but then we have to navigate sort of our earthly citizenship here with different nation states. But yeah, and use Paul to reflect on that. But in this season, I thought it made more sense to think about how does Christ's kingship enable us to live as faithful citizens of Christ's kingdom in the period in which we're finding ourselves right now. So yeah, real quickly, I made one thesis and then gave 3 practices that followed from the thesis. One was, super simple, that whether it's COVID-19 or whether it's post, anytime, right, for those of us who confess Jesus as Messiah and Lord, Christ is King, the crucified, resurrected, and throned Messiah is at the right hand of God the Father. He's the one to whom we owe singular obedience and allegiance. He has the power of life and death, and so in every way we're looking to him to shape our life as God's people, whether that's our politics, whatever that would happen to be. So if that's our starting point, then I argued suggested that, there are at least 3 practices, and I'm sure we could, flesh out more, but at least 3 practices that would flow from that. One is we can, be faithful citizens of Christ's kingdom and live this out by pursuing economic justice and generosity, as opposed to a politics of hoarding and security and self-focus. And that might be some of the humorous, images that come to mind in terms of hoarding toilet paper or whatever it may be. But some of it's real, in terms of we shouldn't be, some of us don't have right now, some of us have lost jobs. And so I know we're all in different places, but wherever we're at, we should be looking at ways to continue our giving, church, don't stop giving to your church, your ministries, your missionaries. We should be looking even what are ways for our local neighbors and people that are on our block to make sure that we're giving and caring and making sure that they're okay, as opposed to, being obsessively focused with our own safety and security. So that was one. The second practice I argued was solidarity with with vulnerable, disenfranchised people. So in some ways this can flow from the first practice, but the people that are already disenfranchised, it feels like, are even now, have more threats and more fears, whether those are, immigrant communities who are continuing to serve us during these days, even at risk to themselves, or whether it may be the elderly or the incarcerated, who often are already the forgotten people in our society and now are located in these tight spaces where contracting the virus can be more deadly. And so what are ways in which we, can press into solidarity with these people? And then the third one is really, we can lament and grieve with hope. So instead of having cute answers about everything's going to be okay, it's all going to go back to normal, we're going to be fine, I think we can be people that lament serious losses, whether it's jobs, whether it's economic stability, whether it's just social gathering with our friends or our church, or whether it's even as serious as illness or loss of friends or loss of loved ones. Like we actually can be people that lament, that grieve, that experience the weight of that loss, instead of peddling, trite sayings. And things may not actually, I mean, I don't know, like, I have no idea, right? Things may not go back to normal, for some of us. But so we can lament and grieve that, while at the same time being marked by people who have real hope, knowing that our lives are secure in Christ. I think of Romans 8, he is at the right hand of God. He is the one who has authority to condemn and give life. Christ Jesus, the one that we worship, who's conquered death, life, things present, things to come, and as a result, we won't be separated. So I don't know. Hopefully, those are the clef notes as quickly as I could do them. No. The one thesis, 3 practices.
Yeah. So. No, those are super helpful. They answer a lot of the questions I was even going to ask, which is kind of crazy. So one thing I was going to ask, in particular with COVID-19, you answered a lot of it, but maybe if we could go a little deeper, is this idea of the people of God being people who can both deeply lament and have an enduring hope, right? And unfortunately, that tension seems all but lost in a lot of Western church context. We don't know what the word lament means or how to go through with that. So what would you say would be maybe some practices that the church can do to start to recapture that tension of being people who can actually grieve and lament while having this enduring hope in Jesus?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, the Bible, Paul says in Romans 12, weep with those who weep. And I think we can embrace the fact that emotions and feelings are a real part of how God created us as humans. And so when I think of many ways in which to protect myself, to make myself maybe not invincible, but not as susceptible as I should be to other people, I can develop defense mechanisms so I don't enter into people's grief. And I think one practice, at least for me, I see my wife do this really well, and I often am convicted to try to do it better, is to really, really experience people's pain. Our Asian American brothers and sisters, speaking about the racism, some of the fear that they have, some of the, very real fears that they have for, I think of some of my students, for their parents who are older and maybe don't speak English as well. And like hearing those fears and certainly not trying to explain them away, but also just sitting with them and feeling the sadness and the weight. Like, that's not right. That's not how it's supposed to be. That's evil. There's wickedness in the world when people are engaging in scapegoating of others. So that's just one example. But I think, really trying to find time and space, not to protect yourself, but to experience the sadness and brokenness that someone else might be experiencing. I think that's a good human flourishing life in Christ, to be attentive to those emotions, and then cry out to God. Obviously we have the Psalms, we have Lamentations, we have other texts that give us opportunities for how to think about how to, bring our sufferings or our pains to God. So that would be one thing I would say. I think for me, there's also a sense, though, in which maybe I'm being overly influenced by my reading of Augustine's City of God lately, but he talks about, suffering sometimes being the therapeutic, not really in the way we mean it in the 21st century, but God does something to our souls, sometimes through suffering, by weaning us away from some of our idols and false loves. And so insofar as there are things like my security, whether it's job security or whether that's, man, is anyone actually going to buy my book in November 2020 of COVID-19? Certain, things that may not be bad in and of themselves. I mean, sports can be one of these as well. Like, please give me baseball back, right? But there's also a part of, like, what are some of these like goods or things that God has given to us that are not meant to be delighted in and loved. They're okay to be used and appreciated. But this might be a time where I get some of those things peeled away, ultimately to hopefully drive me to a deeper love for the supreme good, for God, and how God's revealed himself in Christ. So anyway, those are some of the things I'm thinking about. I guess the last thing I'll say is, and not to take it to a seemingly somber, dark note. I mean, we are all going to die, and we are, the only thing that is eternal is God, his word. We are like grass that's here today, that's gone tomorrow, and our only hope is in what is eternal. So having the chance, I don't want to die. Like, I don't want, I'm not like, this is not something I'm delighting in or looking, or whatever, but I do think it's an opportunity to refocus where our hope actually lies. And it's in our confidence that God has raised Christ from the dead. We too one day will die if the Lord doesn't return before then, and our hope is that he will resurrect us and give us life and recreate this world and make it new and make it right. So anyway, those are some of things I've been thinking about kind of in response to your question, Will.
No, that's super helpful. Just the kind of paradigm shift of what the idols that are being stripped away potentially in the suffering, and then being able to actually spend the time to grieve with those who grieve, weep with those who weep. I think those are helpful things for the church. And I think it's something we really need right now in this season. So, super helpful. I guess shifting to one more question, I guess it's similar, but slightly different note, and actually might apply to what you were going to talk about, I guess, to that group of students at Mosaic. One of the kind of goals of the Kingdom Dreamers, which is the network that this podcast is under, is to create content that helps people imagine a new world according to the way of Jesus, right? And one of the particular challenges for Christians today in the United States is navigating a world of contradicting narratives and half-truths, or just flat-out lies that come with the ties that have happened with Christianity, nationalism, and our partisan politics system in the United States. What would you say, I guess this is two questions, what would you say to help those in the church navigate this reality that we're seeing? And what would you say it looks like to walk faithfully in the way of Jesus in this particular context where these narratives are kind of interweaving in ways that they shouldn't?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a huge question and a good one.
Yeah.
And there is one of my pet peeves is ways in which people, when they try to answer this question, or will pick one passage and then just use that as the hermeneutical key for everything, when in reality the Bible has they're not contradictory, but multiple texts that really speak to what you're getting at. And probably I get most annoyed when Romans 13 basically is sort of held up as carte blanche. Everything the government says has been ordained by God. You must do it. Right? Which I think is a not only selective reading, but misappropriation of that text as well. So I guess if I make it as clear as possible, my first starting point would be that first thesis I mentioned. We are primarily citizens of the kingdom of Christ. We owe allegiance to him and to him only, right? Father, Son, and Spirit, right? The eternal city, the kingdom of Christ, that is the one to whom we give our obedience, our love, direct our loves, our supreme allegiance. Now, within that arrangement, right, God has ordained there to be people that are above us, whether they're civil authorities or they're governing authorities. And so one of our tasks then is to, I think, absolutely, to try to be at peace with those who are above us, to pray for them, to look for ways to honor them, to when our governors say we're going to engage in social distancing because this is for the common good, right? There's not I'm going to be flippant, but I have a level of respect for health professionals and doctors and people that are scientists of infectious diseases that are speaking to the governor, and I evaluate that, and it sounds wise, and therefore, there's a level of Romans 13 coming into play there. I think we also want to be at peace with all people and want to seek the welfare of the city, because this allows us to be a people that are not rebellious, primarily as our primary identity or something, in terms of wanting to engage in coups or overthrows of these earthly governments. That's not where the real power is. Rather, we want to be at peace with them insofar as we're able, so that we can pursue our mission, so that we can, do things without governmental interference and so forth. That said, there are other texts also that come into play, and we see it in many different ways. So, in the book of Revelation, not just in Revelation, but where the government can usurp authority and power, and thereby become an idolatrous force that exerts not good for its people, but ill or for evil. So insofar as government, right, or leaders that are above us are perpetuating policies and practices that harm people and destroy people, then the church, because we have been called to be citizens of Christ's kingdom and to love God's people that he's created, I think are called to be those that are working towards against injustice as a foretaste of the sign to come, right? Whether that means criticizing, certain policing practices, and whether that means advocating for undocumented workers, immigrants here, to be treated with justice and equity, right? That may bring us into conflict at times with some of the actual governing authorities, but we know then who our ultimate allegiance is to in those instances. And so there will be times where hospitality or justice for someone might be what we choose over, in that instance, Romans 13. And lest anyone think this is being like flippant with the scriptures, I think of, the well-known Good Samaritan story where Jesus said, the genius of that parable is basically everybody in the parable, the three people in the parable are going to have to choose which laws they follow, right? They're all going to be lawbreakers and law keepers. But Jesus expects, of course, they should know that what is going to be highest, right? What's going to be the hermeneutical key there for how to practice, how to live, is going to be love of God, love of neighbor. In other words, Leviticus 19:18 is going to supersede contacting ritual purity. Ideally, right, in the parable, you do both, but sometimes these laws bring you into conflict with one another. Anyway, hopefully that makes sense. Will. I know I talked for a long time and may not have even fully got to your question.
No. Well, I knew it was a massive question. You could have 10 books in a sermon series on it, I guess. But no, that's super helpful, especially I guess, recognizing the tensions that the scripture brings and how that's lived out faithfully is not as simple as we like to make it. We like to make things very simplistic and black and white, but there's kind of these grays where there's something higher than the other, right? I think that's super helpful in a very, I guess, divided church where, we're taught to divide very black and white and categorize things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we all want and crave simple answers, and in one way, being a follower of Jesus is simple. It's not rocket science, and in another way, knowing the scriptures well and knowing what that looks like in challenging world, requires knowing the scriptures well. It requires prayer. And I also think it requires communal discernment together as God's people, where we're praying, we're looking at these texts and we're saying, hey, what should we be doing here? This isn't an easy decision, Well,
and that's particularly key, I think, for the American church, that, so much of our identity is super individualistic, that we, that we don't come in as a community and wrestle with the scriptures together. So, and
or we
whatever,
look for talking heads that have an inordinate amount of authority in the world in which we live, as certain personalities to answer every question for us. So
ones that support our already experienced reality, so we can't see outside of our own experience and see others' experience and come together and get the fullness of scripture, the fullness of life in community. So I think that's going to be what's needed in the church as we transition, and maybe as we figure out how to transition out of this COVID-19 season. Who knows how it look. But I guess on a lighter note, as we come, because I don't want to take up your whole afternoon, even though we could talk all afternoon, it'd be fun. But what would you say in the season of quarantine? What would you say you miss most in the season of quarantine, and what would you say has been the best thing being locked up in your house for a couple months?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to sound like an awful person if I say the thing I miss most is baseball.
Hey, I ain't mad at it.
Oh man. I mean, so I like watching Minnesota Twins is just sort of like my comfort food. It's, sometimes like those broadcasters, I feel like, Bert Blyleven and Dick Bramer and those guys, I feel like, we're kindred spirits. And then I coach my two boys baseball team, and we've been even working out like this off season, like going to the facility and working on our pitching and our hitting, and so like not being able to get out there. And then I love those kids and the dads. Like it's been a highlight the last couple of summers, getting to know some of these other fellow Chicagoan dads and their kids, and so I really miss that, Will. I guess if I open myself up to being judged for not saying my brothers and sisters in Christ at TEDS but I'm seeing a lot of them over Zoom still.
Right.
Yeah, so I miss that. I do. What do I enjoy in terms of the time of quarantine? Man, I've been baking and cooking a lot. Like I've been making dessert. It's not normal. I don't usually like bake pies and cookies and cakes and stuff, but I've been doing that, Will, and that's been good. And I've been making all our dinners in the evening and trying out some new recipes. So I've been enjoying all of that. And being together as a family, like having our rhythms kind of slow down, certainly has challenges. We're doing the e-learning, at home with our kids, and that certainly has ups and downs. But it's also been, a great chance to, slow down as a family and spend more time together.
No, that's helpful. And hey, I miss baseball a lot. That's one of the things I miss, I think, in my adult life the most, is that you can go pick up basketball and do things like that. You can't just go pick up baseball. Like, it's so hard to get people to do so.
Yep.
I'm ready for my child to get to that age where we can start this T-ball and slide from there and get close.
I know. Some of the dads were like, "Do we do this for our kids or for ourselves?" Because there's a lot of people that feel exactly like you will. Yeah, including me. And I have to sometimes tell my boys, if you guys ever decide you don't want to do baseball, I don't want to be one of those dads that they like keep playing because their dad wants them to.
Yeah, that's true. Strike that balance. But hopefully my kid enjoys baseball. We're praying towards those ends and see what happens.
As they say, train him out in the way they should, he'll never remember a day that he doesn't know baseball if you
just start it right off the bat. So, but no, I appreciate you jumping on here to talk with me. It's been super helpful. Some things saying. Could you just give the people where they can find you on the internet, and also this podcast you're doing with the other Trinity?
Oh yeah, people? Sure. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I think if you type in Josh Jipp, you'll find me. Our podcast, it's called Forward, FOREWORD, like the forward of a book, Ted's Faculty Podcast. So I do that with my my friends and co-hosts, James Arcadi, Michelle Knight, and Madison Pierce. We interview a lot of, mostly Ted's faculty at this point. We'll probably open it up a little bit more, but we'd love to have you listen and learn a little bit about some of my colleagues, at least at TED. So no,
it's been a good podcast. I've enjoyed it, obviously with some connection there. I still haven't listened to the Van Hooser one that just came out. That's on my list to do this weekend, but it's been good. We'll put all that in the show notes.
Will.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't do that one. Shouldn't say that,
but I'll put it all in the show notes for you podcast listeners. You can just click on the links and check out, connect with Dr. Jipp and also the podcast. But I want to thank you again. Appreciate you, Dr. Jipp. Appreciate your work. Truly a gift to the church, gift to me in your work. Thanks for dropping some knowledge on the Wild World listeners. So
thanks, Will. It's fun to reconnect with you, and really grateful. Seeing people like you, I'm proud of TEDS every day. Seeing you, just continues to remind me of all the good work, kingdom work our grads are doing. So fun to connect for me too, Will.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Wild Wild World Show. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. Follow us on Twitter at KingdomXDreams and learn more at KingdomDreamer.com.
The Kingdom Dreamers are proud to partner with Bluehost, the most powerful web hosting around. We love Bluehost and we'll use no other host for our website. Right now, Bluehost will host your website for only $3.95 a month. The perfect time to start that website you've always wanted, or to move your website to a better provider. To get this deal, go to the Bluehost link in the show notes.